and their guns. So are we.
Come and take it if you want it. Come and take it if you think you can. Come and take it, but I warn you, you'll have to pry it from my cold dead hands. We want the freedom that God gave us, so you best not cross that line. If you want this gun, you gotta come through us and take it.
One shot at a time. Just like Gonzalez, we're keeping our guns.
Thinking that your life's been overrun, but you know you're not the only one.
This is David Brown, author of Deep State. You are listening to Vigilant Liberty Radio.
A different set of rules with every breath. Hold your fire till you see the whites of their eyes. Hold your fire.
You're listening to Saturday Night Cigar Lounge with Taylor, right here on Vigilant Liberty Radio.
And back here on Saturday Night Cigar Lounge, here on Vigilant Liberty Radio, I am your host, Taylor Millard. And like I said before we went to break, I understand the reaction that people had on the torture report. And I understand why people were in favor of it. In favor of the torture that was done, the waterboarding, that sort of thing. I understand that. I mean, you know, these guys, the Al-Qaeda members, they hurt us. You know, they were involved in September 11th. They were the ones who killed 3,000 people when they slammed the airplanes into the World Trade Center and slammed an airplane into the Pentagon. So I understand why people are sitting there and going, look, all we did was waterboard them and rectally feed them, or you know, or keep them up. I understand why this was done, why people have this opinion, and I also understand why this was done in general. A part of it, I think, has to do with power. A part of it has to do with power. There is a certain power in being able to control your detainees, or the people who you're holding prisoner. All right? There is. It's just a way to kind of sit there and say, aha, we got you. And you're under our control, and we're not going to let you out. So I understand that, especially when you have anger and power. If you have power that's kind of brought about by anger, I understand. I understand why people got mad, why the CIA did this. But here's a part of the problem that I have with this too. There was a quote from this entire study, and the Guardian actually did a nice little roundup of it. Where according to an agency, somebody who was looking at a medical expert or a medical officer was talking to the committee and talked about the fact that while IV infusion is safe and effective, we were impressed with the ancillary effectiveness of rectal, of ending the water refusal. So this is what was going on. You had some detainees, you had 5 detainees who, 2 of them refused to eat. One of them was not drinking. So you had 2 who were on a hunger strike. one who wasn't drinking. A fourth was apparently done without a determination of medical need, and a fifth whose case details haven't been divulged. So what they decided to do, instead of locking them up to an IV, they decided that, well, we're going to instead, we're going to force feed them up the rectum. And that's just a problem. Now, I know that there are some people who are going to say, well, you know, if you put a regular IV in them, can't they rip it out? Well, they could, but if you also have them locked up, you know, to where they can't rip it out, then they can't do their hunger strike. If you have them in chains, then yeah. Vicky in the chat room, it'd be more humiliating to go, oh, absolutely. That's why they did it. It humiliated them. It makes sense why they did it. I understand why they did it. I'm not sure I agree with them on it. In fact, I know I don't agree with them on it. As for waterboarding, you know, there is a rumor, I don't know if it's fact or not, that in the movie Safe House, starring Denzel Washington and Ryan Reynolds and Robert Patrick, that there's a scene where Denzel Washington's character gets waterboarded. And what's really funny is that the rumor is that he actually got waterboarded. He said, nope, you're going to waterboard. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Boston Radio in the chat room. Some of the techniques were embarrassing, but considering what we were dealing with, they need to do what they did. Randy, I understand that mentality. I really do. And a part of me doesn't disagree. But another part of me sits there and says, well, the report also said, and yes, it is a political report. And yes, Republicans and Democrats have made it political. We'll get to a comment made by George W. Bush in just a second. But the report said that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, when he was captured, even though they were doing these enhanced interrogations, torture, whatever you want to call it, gave them inaccurate information on where his boss, Osama bin Laden, was located. So if they were ineffective, then why do you do it? If they were effective, okay, I can understand it. I'm not 100% with it. Prairie Dog, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed beheaded a man. I know. I know. I understand why people are in favor of this. You guys hurt us. You guys did this. We're going to give it right back to you. But I guess my question is, isn't the U.S. better than this? And let's also remember, going back to the War Crimes Act of 1996, this is illegal. This was illegal under the War Crimes Act of 1996. Now, if you want to repeal the War Crimes Act of 1996, then all hands are, then okay. Then go ahead. Again, I understand what the chat room is saying. I understand, what I understand. I understand that you're fighting evil, but two evils don't. Combating evil with evil doesn't make it right. And that's a problem. Two wrongs don't make a right. Two rights make the first airplane. But two wrongs don't make a right. FYI, we do have some breaking news that I'm going to break in on. We do have the Senate has avoided a government shutdown and has voted to advance the $1.1 trillion Cromnibus, which means that the government is funded through September. In the cloture vote that we know of, it should not be... Here are the Republicans who voted against cloture. Crapo, Cruz, Heller, Lee, Moran, Paul, Portman, Reich, Rubio, Scott, Shelby, Sessions, and Vitter. Democrats voting no include, and again, I find this interesting, Brown, Franken, Manchin, McCaskill, Warren, and Bernie Sanders. So the Cromnibus is gonna pass. We shouldn't be surprised by this. Vicky, two wongs make awesome stir fry. Ha ha. Same to Prairie Dog. Brian just asked me, what are we to do? Why don't you come up with a list of acceptable techniques and share them with all of us? Well, again, this is my opinion, and I could be wrong, okay? I'm going to admit this is my opinion, and I could be wrong on this. I really do think the threat of torture... Hi, Jabrin. Welcome to the show. I really think that the threat of torture couldn't end up being more of a way to get people to consider talking. And look, maybe I've read too many comic books. Maybe I've read too many comic books where I sit there and said, well, this is how we ought to do it. We ought to do it by, hanging someone off the top of a building by an arm or a leg, and say, all right, this is what you got. You can talk or not. You could consider that. You could also consider, and again, I could be wrong on this. I'm going to admit I could be wrong. I really think, though, that the threat of torture is bigger than actually being able to, is more effective than actually doing it. Maybe you maybe as a way of humiliating them,